welcome to Raise Sensation. I'm your host, Dan, and in this episode, I am going to be looking at this new book from Fantagraphics. It's part of their Atlas Comics library. This is Atlas Comics Library number 2, and it's Venus, Volume 2. So, here's Atlas Comics Library number 1, and it's Adventures into Terror, Volume 1. But if you think these numbers line up exactly, that's not entirely true. I will point out that so far Fantagraphics has done 3 books in this series, in their Atlas reprints. The other one being the Joe Maneely Atlas Artist Edition. And I'll talk a little bit more about how these relate as we go along. But now on to this part about the Venus Volume 2. Venus was a fantasy kind of comic. This is Venus, the goddess from mythology. And she and other mythological beings weave in and out of these stories. The reason this says Volume 2 is because in Marvel Masterworks series, the Atlas era, they did a Venus Volume 1, which was issues 1 through 9. Now, I didn't get that. I don't know, they were putting out so much of this stuff so fast. I'm sure there are some people who had the money to buy all this stuff, but there was a lot more stuff I was more familiar with and wanted more than this particular volume, so I didn't get it, and now it's kind of expensive. It's more expensive to buy a used copy of this than a brand new copy of this larger size, larger format thing. It starts off with a little bit of history of Venus, which is great because I knew very little about this comic. As a matter of fact, I'm not even sure if I've seen any of these comics before. There's one monster in one of the stories, one creature that I know I've seen in a comic. Did I see it in this comic, though? A reprint from this? They're saying in here that none of this stuff was ever reissued, but I feel like I saw these monsters in one of those Marvel reprints. Now, they might have stolen it for another comic, taken that idea and used it in another comic. Anyway, we'll get to that when we get to it. So I'm just going to go through this a little quick. Again, like with these other ones, some of these stories are supposed to be horror. Now, this was definitely, the emphasis was not on horror. It was on heroics that had a supernatural edge. So there are monsters, and there are some villains who are really kind of creepy, but it's meant to be a little more lighthearted. And this was aimed at young girls who like that kind of horror stuff. When I look at the old Japanese manga, I see that they did a lot of horror aimed at young girls, and actually a lot of it's pretty cool. But they didn't do that much in the American comics. And the reason, you say it's aimed towards young girls is because the ads in it were for like doll babies and stuff. So here's some of the here's some real horror stuff, but by the end of the book, they are leaning, because the horror titles were, horror was doing so well, it started getting more horrific, and you'll see that a little bit in it. This is not really a shiny paper, but it's so white that, again, just like the first one, I don't think that does the coloring any favor. Does this look better than some of the reprints of comics from a similar time period that are being reproduced? Yeah, it's much clearer. The line work is much better done. But with the paper being so white, any part that's white really pops more than I think it should. It's really kind of distracting. But that's probably just me. But so I'm just going to flip through this kind of quick. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this one, but but I'm going to put in some highlights. I think I'll point out here, this is Venus meets the son of Satan. And you can see it really is. I did not know that I never read the Son of Satan comic books that Marvel did in, like, I guess it was maybe the 70s or 80s when the comics code changed. But that's him, pretty much. And boy, I think I dodged a bullet not reading that comic, because this is kind of silly stuff. I mean, I'm sure they updated it some for that, but it's still all just kind of silly. Like I said, this all has a supernatural element. There were actually stories apparently in the first volume that had so little supernatural element it was almost non-existent. It was really a teen comic, but like I said, I don't have that first volume. Anyway, she defeats the son of Satan and sends him packing. There are sometimes backup features. Like, here's a science fiction thriller that appears in the one issue. And some of these usually have kind of the usual, well, this one doesn't even, this is only 3 pages. So not much there. The plot that failed. Yeah, some of them, like I said, have very little. There's another, the backup features. It's just a regular adventure kind of comic. Surviving in the wilderness there. Here's another Venus one that I liked. They they take a rocket ship to the moon, Venus and this nerdy fella, and of course there are dragons that live in the volcanoes on the moon. And I think this one was from the early 50s, so I'm not really sure that we didn't know a little better than that at the time. But again, then again, they have mythological characters in this. There's Mercury coming down, and Jupiter shows up to save Venus's bacon a lot of times. Here, I'm just going to point out some other cool looking things. Here's Thor. I don't think Thor and Venus and Jupiter were all in the same part of mythology, but it doesn't matter. They all get together. Apollo's in this episode. They're fighting monsters. They're pretty cute little monsters. Look like pterodactyls or pteranodons or something like that. You know, some mix of stuff. They're pretty fun. I like that scientist's face. I like this one too. There's a part where these guys are being forced to fight in a gladiator. These slaves are fighting, and they're being fed to lions. But then, thanks to the intervention of Venus's god friends, the slaves get set free, and they start riding the lions around to fight for freedom. I thought that was pretty fun. Here's one where Neptune shows up to help Venus. We have apparently dumped, I forget, atomic experiments are happening in the Pacific Ocean and have destroyed these guys' homes. So they're kind of like trying to get up on land, and they're being killed off, and Venus has to make peace with them. Okay. Oh, and this is a backup feature with, I just thought you might like to see that cool alien. Yeah, you're nothing born in this world. Of course not, we're Martians. And oh, this creepy hangman character has a rope that will do his bidding and will hang people for him. And Venus almost gets captured, but it goes. Jupiter saves the day at the last minute. It's a weird kind of grotesque power, but all right. And this is a good one. These troglodyte-looking fellows are robbing graves. And they're a little bit like, well, let's see. There's their faces. they look a little bit like Morlocks. They're not. I won't spoil the giveaway of what's going on. This is the one where gargoyles dwell. I don't know if I've seen this. If anybody's really familiar with these gargoyles that come alive and attack people and are I don't know if this is the exact story I saw. I don't remember. I would have been pretty young, but I remember these things attacking like this. And I mean, I know they say that Venus wasn't reprinted anywhere after the original runs, but if this seems like it could have been in one of those Where Monsters Dwell or something like that. I don't know, but I just remember these things. If anybody recognizes them from something else, let me know. And here's, when it starts turning more into one of the creepier horror comics. You can tell just by the cover, they're really pushing it as a horror comic. Some of the stories are, and it might be because they had already made some of the stories in advance, so they hadn't yet started the stories being all out gruesome. So some of the stories are having that more of an edge to them, but some of them are still like the earlier stuff. And this kind of looks very Attack on Titan like. Oh, and here I'll point out, one of the big things that tells me that whether the horror is meant to be taken really seriously or not is the fact of whether how it's colored. They finally, by the end of the run, they're starting to use a lot of dark colors. A lot of earth tones, a lot more black, and the way he's drawn that hobo that's in with the monsters. That shows me they're getting a little more serious about it, and this part here where these bringing to life these two skeletons, they're fighting it out, and then this monster from the final issue, he looks pretty gruesome, except every once in a while they show a close up of his face, and then he looks a little goofy, but there's some pretty horrific stuff in this one. I mean, that's definitely horror stuff, and there you can tell that that's the monster, but with a human face, and he keeps going back and forth. So anyway, that is a look at this. I'm not as crazy about these straight reissues of some of these comics. I almost feel like a best of would be better than some of these complete things, because the stories were just not consistent. A lot of them I find to be pretty weak. On the other hand, the presentation of this stuff is really great. I'm glad to have this. I don't know that I'm going to collect every volume in this. First off, I probably won't have enough money to do it. You have to decide which things you're going to get and which things aren't. And quite frankly, there's a lot of good stuff coming up in the coming year, and hopefully we'll go over it as it comes around. But I think it's well done. Like I said, the paper being so white makes the colors seem a little weird. But at least it's not slick paper like some of it. So I'm going to mention here again. This was actually, and this is probably not all going to fit on the screen because I have it set for this smaller size. But go watch my Joe Maneely coverage to find out a little bit about this. This is, kind of like a best of Joe Maneely's artwork. And I've heard that I think the second volume, the second Atlas Artist Edition, is going to be Al Williamson, I believe. In which case, I'm definitely all there. This format, the way this is done is really terrific. Like I say, go check it out. But these giant, best of. Now this paper is slick though. That's the part about this, and it's probably a lot of shining. Anyway, check it out. I hope you enjoyed this. Like and subscribe, etc., etc. Have a good day.